Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros, it's Drew here. Let's talk lockers. Lockers have become a staple of the amusement park industry over the past couple of years, especially at those parks that are now in the Six Flags chain. You'll also see them at SeaWorld parks, and even Universal parks now feature them prominently on a lot of big rides. But there have always been a few exceptions. One of those, the Disney parks. For the longest time at all of the parks in that chain, there were no lockers needed for a ride. Well, that is until Tron showed up. But just like Universal, those lockers are free at the very least. The other major park I can think of that didn't have lockers for an individual ride, Knott's Berry Farm. Well, that was until September 8th, 2025, where 3 of its largest attractions are now getting the locker treatment. Ghost Rider, HangTime, and Silver Bullet all now feature lockers that are mandatory for your bags. Now, to be completely honest, that was a luxury in comparison to other Cedar Fair and Six Flags parks, especially as a regular there. And with the closest parks being Disneyland, a lot of the visitors that go to Knott's usually go to Disney too. So this little lockerless pocket of Orange County was always so nice to visit, especially when you had a bag with you. Now it's going to get at least a tiny bit more complicated. So let's run through all the pros and cons and potentially give some explanations on why the park might be adding lockers on 3 of its biggest rides. First, let's go in depth on the bag policy at Knott's Berry Farm. During regular park hours, a regular backpack is totally fine, as well as a large assortment of fanny packs, sling bags, and a whole host of other types of bags that are able to fit on your person very easily, with the only caveat being that you won't be able to take them on most rides, and that they will be searched at security before entering the park. Now, this is a great thing, especially if it's a super hot day, or maybe potentially a colder day. You need a place to put an extra jacket, that's where you go. Sunscreen, there. Maybe an umbrella if it starts to rain. And of course, a refillable water bottle so you don't need to buy water at the parks. With all of that included, it's also a great place to put any other loose belongings that you might have in your pockets, just to make sure they don't go flying out on the coaster if you aren't the typical coaster enthusiast with cargo shorts or zipper pockets on your pants. But this is where I'm going to bring up that caveat that I brought up earlier. You can't take them on most rides. So unlike at Disneyland, where you literally take your bag with you on every single ride, including things as intense as Radiator Springs Racers and the Incredicoaster, at Knott's, there's only a handful of rides that make an exception. Calico River Rapids is one of them, the Timber Mountain Log Ride another, Calico Mine Ride, Knott's Berry Tales, a handful of the rides in Camp Snoopy, and then Jaguar and Coast Rider, 2 of the family-friendly coasters in the park. I might be missing a couple in there, but for almost all of the remaining flat rides at the park, you put them off to the side within the ride area. Now, for the remaining coasters that I haven't talked about yet, there are always cubbies off to one side of the station, with the exception of Snoopy's Tenderpaw Twister Coaster, where you just put it off to the side on the station floor itself. So for rides like Accelerator, Sierra Sidewinder, Pony Express even, you have to walk through the train following the people getting off the ride, put your bag in a cubby off to the far side of the station, and then come back to the train to get properly secured in your seat. This was the standard procedure on the rides that are currently getting locker systems implemented. Now, if you think that sounds like a hassle, it definitely is, and can definitely inflate wait times, but it was free, fairly simple, and when there was a sliding door attached to make sure to cover all your belongings while you were going around the track, pretty safe too. Then the merge between Six Flags and Cedar Fair happened. This idea of lockers being implemented was something we joked about, at least half-heartedly, knowing that they were probably on the horizon. Then that sliding door that protected your items mysteriously disappeared on a random day following. And then next thing you know, in summer of 2025, they start the process of implementing lockers. Then we found out the price is going to be $3 for 2 hours, or that you can buy an all-day locker pass for $15. Meaning you'd need to rent a locker 5 separate times in a day to make it worth it, when only 3 rides are getting lockers. Now, at a park like Kings Island or Cedar Point, or plenty of other Cedar Fair and Six Flags parks throughout the chain that have lockers at almost every single major roller coaster, that price tag per day actually starts to make sense. I look back at my visit to Kings Island in 2022, where it was a $10 all-day pass, and technically with how many times we used lockers throughout the day, we ended up saving a good $15 $15 to $20, which, to be honest, it's still including a needed payment. Feels like you're punishing customers that are spending their entire day at the park, especially when we were tourists and wanted to get the most bang for our buck experiencing the park as a whole. And to be honest, I've always shared that thought. It doesn't matter what park. If I have to pay extra to potentially ride something just because I brought my refillable water bottle in or forgot to wear the right pants, it feels like a punishment for visiting the park. Especially when there are other park chains, cough cough Universal, that do that entire system for free. Oh, and they're double-sided, so it's even easier after the ride's over to potentially get your stuff afterward, but we'll get to that in a moment. So with all my ranting over, let's talk about what's happening with the 3 Knott coasters and what their locker situation's gonna be like. As Ghost Rider is undergoing its seasonal maintenance period before Scary Farm, it won't be reopening until the 20th, but Silver Bullet and HangTime should be open in the meantime, meaning if you visit the park ASAP, you'll get to experience the wonder of $3 lockers. So, looking at Silver Bullet's setup, it is your most basic locker setup of any coaster out there. Having the lockers outside the entrance as well as near the exit gets a plus in my book, as you won't be able to miss them before hopping in line, and then after getting off the ride, it should be pretty easy to walk just over to the right-hand side to grab your stuff from there. And realistically, since this ride is already a ridiculously high throughput, I can only imagine that operations should get better from this point going forward, as you won't have to have 4 individual people per row in some cases walk over to the other side of the station, drop their stuff off, and then walk back, which on this ride out of the 3 I feel like is a more common experience for your ride operators to be sitting there waiting for people to sit before they can get going, as this ride is also the easiest ride to get on and off of, and honestly I do think this is the best implementation of the locker system out of the 3. However, I have one major worry, and that's not having enough lockers when the line gets extremely long. Now, if you've ever been over a holiday weekend to Knott's Berry Farm or potentially to Knott's Scary Farm on a Saturday, you'll know the line for Silver Bullet and all of its extended queue gets filled up and then some. I am genuinely scared for any of the guest services that are going to have to deal with the aftermath when there's no lockers left when this queue is filled during that Saturday Scary Farm night. And in my opinion, I honestly think they needed to double the amount of lockers here. But outside of that concern, I do think this is mostly going to be a positive improvement if you discount the price that you have to pay. Now let's go to HangTime. Again, discounting the price, you enter the line for the attraction before heading toward the left. From that point, you'll actually get this pretty elongated locker situation that is almost twice as many lockers as are included at Silver Bullet, and then after putting your things in a locker underneath the track, you'll end up walking into where I assume the line will officially start now. But there's your big problem. You have to walk through the entrance of the attraction, or what used to be the entrance of the attraction, before putting your things in a locker, meaning after you exit the ride, you have to go back through the entrance to get your things, and then back out the entrance as well. And as far as people using the old fast lane entrance that was on the right-hand side underneath the marquee, you might have to enter the entrance before exiting the entrance, before entering the other entrance, before exiting the ride at the exit, before entering the entrance, before exiting the entrance. Does that make any sense? No, not at all. While I will admit this should help operations, at least hopefully, it's pretty obvious they weren't entirely sure on where to place the lockers without taking away valuable midway space, and have instead made one of the craziest choke points at a park I think I've ever seen. And I will say, since this is one of the rides at the park that they actively discourage you having anything in your pockets, having lockers does make some sense. Instead of openly bringing your phone, your wallet, maybe your keys over to an open bin. But the placement of them on this attraction is questionable at the best. Now that moves us to our third example, Ghost Rider, the most popular and famous ride at the park. It's had some weird issues over the past handful of years with its queuing system. At one point in time, you would enter through the cave, walk down a windy pathway before getting to the main queue building, going through tons of switchbacks before going up a set of stairs, and then a ton more switchbacks up top. At one point, they ended up saying, no more waits up top, but we can have every switchback full down below. Then there was half those switchbacks available down below. And now they've reverted to waiting back up top because half of the line has been taken out for the lockers in the lower portion of the queue building. Now this is where I'm left asking so many questions about how this process is going to work, and we won't know until September 20th. But in my mind, there are two different options. The first is taking some notes from Forbidden Journey at Universal Studios, where you wait through a large portion of the line before then putting your things in a locker and then joining the rest of the queue. But then when you exit, you hop halfway through the line already, and I know that over the years that definitely meant a lot of line cutting was happening, especially with how cramped that area was, with how many people were there. It was just madness to try and keep track of where you were and where your things were. Thankfully, they changed that system. But at Ghost Rider, considering where the lockers are, that's your first option. You go through the tunnel like normal. Walk alongside the opening turn. And once you get inside the queue station, go through a couple of switchbacks before meeting with those people who got off the ride and are grabbing their things from there. That's when you'd re-enter the queue, going up the stairs and going through the rest of the line like normal. Now, to be honest, I really hope that's not the way they're doing this, but we'll just have to wait and see. The second option I could think of is going to be a little weird, to say the least, unless they've completely opened up the queuing area next to the lockers, which I really hope they thought this through. What that would look like would be you walking all the way over to the queue building before hopping in line, dropping your things in a locker from that point, and then walking all the way back around through that long portion of the queue to then walk back through the queue itself from the start. From that point, there would be less switchbacks, but you wouldn't be involved with the mess in the locker area before heading up into the station as normal. Hopping off the ride, then you could openly go back to that section underneath the station and grab your things without being intermingled with all the people in the line. Now, I think the more obvious choice would be the second, even though you will have to do a lot more walking if you have a bag at the park, but after exiting the ride, there would be a lot less turmoil. So hopefully it's that second option. And hopefully they have enough lockers for those extremely busy Not Scary Farm Saturdays when that line ends up wrapping itself around the exterior and can reach over 3 hours. But at the same time, hopefully this locker situation does cut that 3-hour wait down significantly. So with that all said, I have a couple of closing points. Number one, I am really worried about how the guests are going to take this, at least at first, especially with how many different rules per ride there are. With Jaguar, you bringing a bag on, versus Accelerator, which still has the cubbies, and of course your other major three having the lockers. People are still going to be bringing their bags to this park, at least for a long time, and people usually don't like change, especially when you have to randomly pay for it. So I will say I am very sorry to all of you who work in guest services. You deserve none of the backlash that will probably be coming your way, and I appreciate all you guys do to make everything more clear for everyone when the company makes things quite the opposite. Now, my second point, they are going to need staffing at the lockers and at the entrance. That is an absolute must. At the bare minimum, you need someone at the entrance at all times for those rides with a locker. Here's the problem. None of those rides ever have a ride attendant out front. There was one point in time that HangTime had someone out front, but that was close to its opening day. The amount of people that are going to end up making their way all the way to the station with a bag before being turned back is going to be massive if they do not have someone standing out front being like, hey, you need to go put your bag in that locker over there. Sorry, is what it is. I can't do anything about it. And I cannot emphasize that enough. This was a great thing that we had at Kings Island when we were visiting. There was always somebody out front being like, hey, you have a bag, make sure you go put it in the locker before we officially got into the queue. Because of that, there was no major headache whenever we made it up to the station. There was no thinking, oh man, I guess we have to walk all the way back through the line and not ride this after waiting for 20 minutes, because that will be the exact situation if they don't staff someone out front. And if they are doing that, please give them an umbrella. That would be kind of a necessity in my mind. But I want to say, with all that said, I absolutely adore Knott's Berry Farm. It is easily one of my favorite parks in the world, and I might as well consider it a second home at this point. I have nothing but care and respect for those who put their effort into making the park a better place. It's just at times when mergers like this can't help but make me bite my fingernails. And believe me, I don't want to be CEO for the day or anything like that, as there is a lot on the plate right now. But I hope you at least all enjoyed my rant about lockers being implemented to Knott's Berry Farm, and I'd really love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think they're going to help in the long run? And do you think they're going to be implemented on more rides? Let me know. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. But with all that said, I wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe. We're going to be covering Knott's Berry Farm a lot more in the next couple of weeks and months, and so much more. But of course, until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.